Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, kind of hidden transformation that's literally happening right in our own backyards. All across the country, massive tech infrastructure is being rapidly built out to power the digital age and this whole AI revolution we keep hearing about. But it begs a really big question. Who's actually paying for it? And what happens when the towns hosting these massive projects decide they've had enough? We're going to unpack the incredible story of the hidden subsidies fueling the hyperscale data center boom and the fierce grassroots resistance that's starting to push back. Let's get things off with a scene from last spring that perfectly captures this tension. Picture this: hundreds of furious residents packed into a fairgrounds in Box Elder County, Utah, over a newly approved data center. The anger in the room was so intense that the three county commissioners actually got up, walked out, and had to finish the meeting online. After this happened, Canadian billionaire Kevin O'Leary, who, it's worth noting, has financial ties to the project and has kind of become a de facto voice for the industry, went on Tucker Carlson's show. He claimed that over 90% of the protesters were bussed in and even accused these citizen groups of being proxies for the Chinese government. But local reporting from the Salt Lake Tribune found a very different reality on the ground. There were no buses anywhere near the site, and local groups quickly took to social media to heavily ridicule O'Leary's unproven accusations. Section 1. The Utah Uproar, the Stratos Project. So, the project at the center of this whole controversy in rural Utah is a proposed hyperscale data center, basically a massive industrial-grade server farm. The developers want to build Stratos across 3 tracts of land, totaling 40,000 acres. That translates to about 62 square miles. To pull that abstract number down to earth for a second, that footprint is roughly the size of the entire European country of Liechtenstein. Or if you overlaid it on a map of the US, this single data center project is larger than the cities of San Francisco, Boston, Pittsburgh, or Miami. But guys, it's not just land, it's power. At full capacity, the Stratos project is projected to consume roughly 9 gigawatts of electricity. Now, to put that into perspective, that single facility would demand more than double the electricity usage of the entire state of Utah as it currently stands. It's an absolutely staggering draw on the local power grid. And then there's the water. 16 billion. That is the number of gallons this single facility expects to swallow up every single year. That works out to about 44 million gallons each day. In human terms, that's enough water to supply a city of 150,000 to 300,000 residents. We're talking about roughly 6% of the entire state of Utah's current population. In local water basins that are already overallocated, you can imagine what a tremendous strain this puts on resources. Section 2. The hyperscale explosion, a national boom. You see, Stratos is really just one piece of a massive, mostly untracked national boom. We already have over 3,000 data centers operating in the US, but what's truly shifting right now is the type of infrastructure being built. Industry analysts estimate that a staggering 60% to 70% of new facilities won't be your standard server rooms. They're going to be these massive, resource-heavy hyperscale operations. This is a monumental shift in our national infrastructure, and it demands vast amounts of land, power, and water. Section 3. Paying the hidden costs. Public subsidies for private profit. We usually think of this whole tech boom as a huge triumph of private capitalism, right? But honestly, much like the railroad barons of the 1800s, today's developers have become incredibly adept at turning public money into private profit. It's pretty ironic that the world's most valuable trillion-dollar tech giants rely so heavily on quiet, local taxpayer handouts to build their empires. Taxpayers are secretly subsidizing these companies through 3 main pillars: our energy infrastructure, our municipal water systems, and direct tax giveaways. Let's break down exactly how you and I end up footing the bill. Let's start with energy. Most of these centers draw their electricity straight from public utilities. So when they need, say, 9 gigawatts of power, utilities have to go out and build new power plants and transmission lines. And guess what? That cost is spread across every ratepayer. That means everyday households are subsidizing tech companies. Virginia, which is the world's largest data center hub, where these centers consume 40% of the state's electricity, finally caught on to this. They passed legislation SB 253, which actually removed this hidden subsidy. The result? It saved every household about $5.50 a month, shifting a 15.8% cost increase right back onto the data centers where it belongs. And now 8 other states are looking to copy this exact move. And this hidden cost doesn't stop at energy. It spills right over into water and local taxes. Unlike power, water is often managed by tiny, underfunded local districts. They usually lack the resources to calculate the true cost of a hyperscale facility, let alone the political muscle to fight back. Then you have local governments totally wooed by promises of big investments, handing out massive direct giveaways. Think about it. If a developer buys $500 million in servers and a state waives a 4% sales tax, that's a $20 million public gift. Add in property tax abatements of 50% to 100%, and the burden of fixing worn-out roads and expanding fire services falls entirely on everyday taxpayers. Section 4. The Rural Resource Drain. Myths versus reality. But wait a minute, you might be wondering, aren't these developers bringing massive economic booms and tons of jobs to these areas? Well, the reality on the ground kind of busts that whole local jobs myth. During the construction phase, local workers typically represent only 40% to 60% of the on-site workforce. Because these rural areas just lack the sheer population to fill the roles, nearly half the workforce is bussed in from out of state. And once the facility is actually built, the permanent workforce in a completed hyperscale data center is, by design, incredibly small. So why do developers aggressively target rural places like Box Elder County? It's simple, really. Cheap land, easy permitting, very little competition for resources, and crucially, a lack of organized opposition. But for the town itself, the sudden influx of out-of-state workers completely bids up local housing, destroys existing highways with heavy traffic, and heavily stresses water and sewage systems that were just never built for that kind of load. The promised economic boom often ends up looking a lot more like a long-term disruption. Section 5. Communities fighting back. The pushback. The good news here? People are waking up. As the hidden costs and massive public subsidies of the AI and big tech expansion finally come to light, citizens are utilizing the democratic process to say no. And the momentum of this grassroots resistance is snowballing fast. In Festus, Missouri, a town of just 14,000 people, voter turnout jumped 129%, and citizens literally voted out every single council member who had approved a $6 billion AI data center. In Millville, New Jersey, local citizens united and outright blocked a 1.4 gigawatt facility. And it's not just small towns. Entire states, including Oklahoma, Kansas, and Maine, have stepped in to enact statewide moratoriums on these bills. If you look at the timeline of this resistance, it's honestly pretty incredible. As of April 2026, data shows at least 69 jurisdictions have placed a moratorium on data center construction, and that number just keeps growing. In fact, public concern and community opposition have nearly overtaken supply chain problems as the #1 reason new data center projects stall today. This is a massive, massive shift in an industry that is incredibly used to getting exactly what it wants. And the financial impact of this citizen pushback is absolutely staggering. $18 billion since mid-2024. That is the amount of project capital completely blocked due to public concern, with another $46 billion delayed. In Georgia alone, 6 gigawatts of planned capacity were canceled. In Indiana and Kentucky, 8 major projects were stopped. Everyday people are literally halting the momentum of trillion-dollar tech giants. So what's driving this fierce resistance? Well, it's direct, real-world experience. The horror stories are really starting to pile up. Local media in Boardman, Oregon reported that private wells were actually contaminated near a data center. Over in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, residents are forced to live with a permanent 60-decibel hum from a nearby facility. It's technically within legal limits, sure, but it never stops. Day and night, it acts like a permanent, community-wide case of tinnitus. These stories serve as a really loud warning to the rest of the country. Look, the fight against big tech and big money over our local resources is going to be a long battle. It requires sustained community involvement. But the tools to fight back, town meetings, ballot boxes, state legislatures, they are working. The hyperscale boom is sweeping the nation, looking for cheap land, free water, and taxpayer subsidies. Your community could literally be next. The only question is, when they show up, will you be ready? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and definitely stay curious.